Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Madam Chair, it appears we have forum, so we'd like to start the meeting.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'd like to welcome everyone to the August 8th, 2024 Landmarks Commission meeting. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio Open Meeting Law and Section 101.02 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal from any case due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the beginning of the presentation. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, virtual attendants will use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait till the chair or the facilitator to recognize you and to be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand and by hitting the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through the proper channels have been considered. Proper channels for comments are sending an email to the landmarks@clevelandohio.gov email address with a comment or letter, calling and or leaving a message at 216-664-2532, sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall located at 601 Lakeside Avenue, Suite 519. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the stated deadline are collected by Landmark staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to the scheduled meeting. Mr. Musson, would you like to go to procedures?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The chair will call each agenda item and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize design review committee recommendations and any public comment received. The deadline for public comment is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to the commission members prior to the meeting. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
We'd like to call the August 8th, 2024 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Drag?
Here.
Mr. Dooley?
Here.
Councilmember Gray? Director Wong? Mr. Lozier?
Here.
Mr. Sandberg? Here. Mr. Strickland? Mr. Trasick?
Here.
Dr. Williams?
Here.
And Ms. Trapp?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum. I'd also like to note that we also have Sierra Lipscomb, our representative from law, as well as Patty McGinty-Aston from the Law Department joining us today. And then Carl Brunges, Jessica Beam, and myself are also present.
Excellent. We'll begin with our certificates of appropriateness then. I'd like to call our first applicant forward to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project. The first applicant is located at 1795 West 44th Street, siding installation.
Madam Chair, the first item has been removed from the agenda, request of the applicant. So we move on to the next case.
All right, then we will move on to the Market House located at 2621 Lorraine Avenue, renovation and addition.
Good morning. This is Wes Harper with Horton Harper Architects, and I'm here to present 2621 Lorraine Avenue. Next slide, please. So the project site is just west of West 26th Street on the south side of Lorraine Avenue. And we are obviously just west of West 25th Street and the Market District. Next. The site is a deep site along Lorraine. We have a surface parking lot directly to our east. We have a vacant property, which we'll get into some minor detail about that as the presentation goes along, to our south. And then to the west, we have the Hansa Import House facility, basically taking up that entire side of the property line. Across the street, we have the parking lot for Great Lakes Brewing Company, and then a handful of 2- and 3-story structures. Further to our east, we have the United Bank building, which is, of course, I believe 9 or 10 stories, and then a handful of other buildings with lower stature in terms of height. Next. So this is the front facade of the structure in question. Obviously, we have a 3-story building here. The structure itself has small retail space on the first floor and then apartments above. You can tell slightly from this image that we have a building that is a gable roof profile in section, but in elevation along the front, we have kind of a false front configuration that makes it appear like a full 3-story structure. We, to this point, have gotten approval from SHPO for the improvements that we're proposing, and we're, of course, in front of this committee back in May, received schematic approval or conceptual approval. Next. Here we have the sidewalk or pedestrian experience along Lorraine. The siding of the existing structure is in quite poor condition, but one of the criteria to get SHPO approval is to fully investigate the condition with the hope of reutilizing the existing siding, but in all likelihood, we'll have to replace siding due to its deterioration. Next. Here is a larger view of that eastern facade. You can see that we have 3 roof profiles for the structure. Towards Lorraine to the right, we have kind of the highest peak, which allows us to get a lofted kind of half 3rd floor for the front apartments. And then as it steps down, it's more of a vaulted ceiling for the 2nd floor units. And then furthest to the rear, we have a low pitch roof, which we're kind of considering lack of a better term, the hyphen between the existing structure and a proposed 2-story addition. Next. This is just another view from that eastern parking lot. Next. Here is a view of the rear. So the facade that's closest to you right now would essentially be covered up by the new addition. Next. Here we have the western facade. Get another view of the siding structure. This facade would have a handful of windows removed so that the interior layouts can function properly with new kitchens, bathrooms. So this facade will change a bit. Next. Just going through some of the surrounding context. This is the northeast corner of 26th and Lorraine. Obviously the West Side Market in the background. Next. The southeast corner of 26th and Lorraine. Next. Here is the pedestrian view looking down Lorraine across the street from our project. Next. And then here we have the existing site plan that shows the existing structure, obviously fronting Lorraine Avenue. On the site, we have an existing walkway on the eastern side of the property that leads to the back of the parcel. And then the existing setbacks would, of course, remain as they are. And then as we get to the proposed site plan, we'll see the setbacks of the addition next. And here we are. So we would be essentially matching the footprint of the existing structure for the eastern facade of the new addition. In this proposal that we have here, it's a 2-story addition with 4 apartment units. When we came to you previously, I believe it was a 3-story structure. But again, to get SHPO's support for the project, they had us bring it down to a 2-story addition so they appear subservient to the existing structure. We are proposing a 0-foot setback in the rear, which is one of the zoning variances that we'll be applying for. And essentially what is going to happen, we are also working with the current developer for this project on another project on the vacant property that you see to the far right. So the new structure that would be on that vacant parcel would also be a 0 lot line. And so that would essentially butt up against our new 2-story addition. Another variance that we will be going for are the AC units along the western property line. We don't see this as being an issue. From what I understand, the property owner to the west has been supportive of improvements on our parcel. So we will be looking at that variance. You can see that the new addition at its closest has a 3-foot setback, and its more typical setback is just under 6 feet as it heads to the south property line. Next. So here we have the northern facade of the existing structure. We're of course looking to essentially replicate everything on the 2nd and 3rd story as it currently exists. We have a couple different profiles of, actually a few different profiles of lapped siding. You can kind of see in between the 3 windows of the 2nd floor, almost a scallop shape to that lapped siding that exists on the current structure, and we're looking to replicate that. And then upon further review, there's actually a more shingle type siding in the small areas above the 2nd floor windows, which we'd replicate. And then additionally, the areas on either side of the 3rd floor window has almost a live edge profile for the lapped siding. So we're looking to replicate all 4 of those, or all 3 of those kind of unique profiles for the siding. And then the remainder of the building is essentially your more typical 5-inch exposure wood lapped siding. We would be using a true wood siding as opposed to a cement board per the direction of SHPO. For the storefront, if you recall from the existing structure, there is a horizontal piece of structure that basically aligns with the, I guess, the higher, or let's say the mullion that runs horizontally within the storefront that spans over the doors. That would be removed because we think that that was simply an addition for signage around 2008. And we're also looking to expand the panes of glass within the storefront, which we think likely matches what was existing originally. We don't have any existing photos or historical photos of this facade, unfortunately, but we've been kind of relying on just kind of the typical storefront typology that existed previously on other projects. So we are then proposing 3 overhead lights shining down onto the storefront. We're still kind of jockeying back and forth on exactly what kind of light that would be, but it would be something that illuminates that portion of the facade while also allowing for signage on that horizontal strip above the storefront. The color that we're proposing here, people have certainly had their opinions about it. It is a color that we selected off of the Ohio City Historic District website. We are looking to possibly tone down the saturation of the blue, but in my mind, the context of Lorraine Avenue has always been quite eclectic in terms of its colors and materials. And we think that this basically represents a color scheme that isn't really represented in this stretch of the street. Next. Here's a view so we can catch the eastern facade. You can see that we'll be matching the window trim and of the existing building, basically replicating the 3.5-inch trim around it. And that goes for all of the windows on the project. You can see that we're looking to slip in some landscaping along that eastern side of the building, which will provide some privacy to the first floor apartments as you head further back. You can also get a sense of the roof profile here of the addition. It in some ways disappears relative to the existing structure, keeping that existing building as the more prominent piece in the composition. Next. Same goes for the western facade. You can see the lack of windows on the second floor of the northernmost portion of the building. As I mentioned, there's the kind of the low slope roof portion towards the rear, the existing portion at least. We're going to be looking at that on the other side. We have it shown as kind of the charcoal color on the east side. We have it shown as the blue here because that portion of the building is in the same plane as this face of the structure. So we can kind of look at this in elevation as we progress here, but it's something that we're open to hearing your comments on to make a final decision there. Next. Here's kind of an aerial view looking towards the southwest, where you can kind of understand the relationship between the existing building and the new addition. You can see that the roof pitch of the addition is lower than that of the front. And again, that was SHPO and their wish to have it subservient in height. You also get an idea of pedestrian access from Lorraine Avenue to the side entry of the existing structure for the apartments in that building. And then there's another entry in that addition. So, next. Here we have more of a orthogonal view of that eastern facade, really taking in the relationship between the two buildings, and then how that hyphen obviously separates those two to make them appear like two individual structures. And then the windows in the addition are a bit more We have a higher number there just to get light and air into those units, which we think is important. Next. Here is the view of the southern facade from Keene Court, which runs parallel to Lorraine, south of this our block here. And again, this facade would essentially be covered up by the proposed structure in the vacant lot that you can kind of see as grass in between the two parking lots. Next. Here is a view of the addition from the existing east parking lot. You can see that the window detailing is essentially the same as the existing structure. We'd be using the same cladding material, and then you can see the entry to this building kind of delineated by the downlight above it. Again, expansive vegetation along this facade to offer some privacy to the apartments on the first floor. Next. In plan, start at the bottom here. First floor, we have a 517 square foot retail space fronting Lorraine Avenue. It's a bit smaller than it is currently, but the existing tenant that's there has agreed that they'd like to potentially come back when this renovation is done to inhabit that space. We've added a new stair to the existing building. It's called Stair 1. And that essentially leads up to 3 units on the second floor, 2 narrow units to the south, and then a slightly larger unit to the north that then has a second floor that would be accessed by either a spiral stair or a smaller kind of standard stair, which we're still going back and forth on how to do that. Back to the first floor, you can see the addition to the south. Is shown in the dark hatch. The units in the rear are actually contained, of course, in the addition, but then partially in the existing structure in the hyphen, as you can see from the bedroom and bath, essentially to the left of the existing / addition note. So the new units are actually spanning both new structure and existing. And again, only 2 stories worth of units on the addition. Third or the second floor would have vaulted ceiling for those units. Next. Here is the north elevation. We do note that we're looking to replicate the 4 different lap siding types. And then we're also noting the potential height, the new structure that hopefully in the future could be built on the lots to the east. Next. Here is the south elevation. This would be simply just painted masonry, essentially. Since it's a 0 lot line, it would be a 2-hour rated wall, if I'm not mistaken. And the simplest way to do that is to build a masonry wall and paint it for the time being, and then understanding it would eventually be covered up by a new building. Next. Here are the east and west facades. You can see the areas where we are looking to infill windows and a couple doors. But again, that's necessary for basically the kitchens and bathrooms to function correctly. The existing windows basically sit at 28 or 30 inches above the finished floor of the second floor, which doesn't really play well with modern countertop heights. Next. Here's the proposed material palette. Again, we're looking at maybe toning down the saturation of the blue. Personally, I like it, but we're looking to take another look at that. And then you'll have to excuse me, but the wall sconce at the bottom right is an antiquated version. Next. Here is a preliminary tree preservation plan. We're essentially removing everything from the site to make this project work. There are a couple trees that are close to the construction site. We would, of course, be maintaining and protecting those during construction, one of which is eastern property, and then one in the tree lawn along the sidewalk. Next. Here is a landscape plan. As I mentioned, we have landscaping along that east facade to promote privacy, and then probably a handful of plantings along the western facade as well. Next. And here we have just a late addition to the presentation, a site plan that shows how the project that we're talking about here today could potentially integrate with a proposed 3-story apartment structure directly to the south. We were approved for schematic design for that project at Planning Commission on Friday, and we're looking to proceed through the design process for that project. So with that, I think that's all I have for you today. I'd be happy to hear any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll then move on to Design Review Advisory Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was seen by the Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee last Thursday. We did not have a quorum, so no votes taken. They did have a good discussion about the different types of materials on the front to keep that as close as possible. They asked to look at the door on the new addition, which appears to have been adjusted. The material, they're interested in the material of the windows. There were some changes they've addressed some changes that were not shown on the original, the vertical casings matching. Asked to consider different colors, as the use of traditional trim colors as main body colors may not be necessarily appropriate, and to make it a little bit less bright. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then Mark, staff recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think all in all, this project has shaped up nicely. I think the hyphen between the historic and the new construction is very successful. We do have, I guess, a couple of points. As always, staff will need to see the final materials once SHPO has approved them, like details on specific light fixtures, windows, that sort of thing. Regarding the lights, we feel that the gooseneck lights on the sides of the building aren't appropriate. They're more appropriate on the front. That type of light was usually meant to illuminate signage. So on the side of the building, if they want security lighting or something, they should come up with another lighting fixture. And even the placement of them on the front, they sort of light up the windows, but historically those types of lights would be used to light up signage. So maybe centering those under the 2nd-story windows instead of centering them over the panes of glass in the 1st-story windows would make sense. Do have some concerns about the landscaping being so close to the foundation, just kind of creating moisture issues for the siding, the foundation, and the walls in general. So we'd like to see those final plant selections. We'd also recommend investigating some sort of privacy fence in the rear, I guess, west elevation around the AC condenser units, just for safety and because they're going to be very visible. And I guess, the siding is up on your screen now. Staff feels that this is a very, very important element. We're happy to hear that they're going to, maintain that look. So we just want to ensure that that is, that all of those different types of siding, all those different elements are kind of documented and maintained or replicated as closely as possibly. So staff is happy to work with the applicant on that. And then we also, would like to work with the applicant on final color selections. While the colors selected may be from the historic palette, they appear more like they're from the modern suburban palette or trim colors. So we'd like to see a more traditional body color taken from the era of the historic building here. And would also just like to note that staff would recommend supporting any required variances. Don't know what all those variances are, but would recommend that if the commission chooses to grant a certificate of appropriateness, they also include support for any needed variances in that. Thank you.
Thank you for that summary. We'll then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off?
Ms. Anderson has her hand up.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I applaud the applicant for making the effort to retain the different siding profiles. It's a subtle but a very important feature of this building. Wanted to ask about like there's some missing page. I was just wondering if that profile was going to be retained as well. At the top, the one that's on the right-hand side looks to be missing. I was just wondering if they're going to duplicate what's at the top.
The live edge here in the view that we're looking at now.
Yeah, at the top.
Yeah, we're going to be essentially replicating it in kind. You know, if the profile is the scallop, as you see at the bottom, we'd certainly replicate that. And then, you know, the very subtle live edge profile you see above the third floor, or at the third floor. It's actually something we didn't notice until it was brought up at the Ohio City Landmarks presentation. It almost just looked like, you know, wood that's warped and is deteriorating over the years, but upon closer inspection, it is live edge. It's something we'd like to retain.
Okay, and at the very top of the building, there's, yes, on there. Just wanted to make sure that was going to be retained. It wasn't going to just be a plain.
Correct. Yeah, we would have that molding at the top, at that cornice line, for sure.
I know this came up when this was presented as a concept, that the color is too bright, and I agree. I think it's pretty much an agreement that the color right now as proposed is too bright, and toning it down would be more fitting. I'm not totally comfortable with the variance. I don't know why the building needs to go to the lot line. I think having a little bit of green space, even if it's 6 feet, might be a nice thing for the residents. The units look to be relatively small, and somebody might want to, you know, go outside and sit down in the courtyard area. It's a courtyard now, which is, of course, considerably larger, but it's something that doesn't sit that well with me.
Yeah, with the, you know, basically elimination of the third floor to meet SHPO, to get these units to be a square footage that makes sense and is marketable, we had to go to that zero lot line. Ideally, we wouldn't. It is a much more expensive assembly in terms of fire protection. So, but it is something that for this project to make sense and have marketable units, we needed to go to that zero lot line, unfortunately. And to the color, you know, we get so many complaints about Cleveland being all brown and gray and beige. You know, we look at these projects as maybe an opportunity to add a bit of color that is a little bit surprising. But, you know, we are open to looking at alternatives.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that there's color. I'm really pleased to see that it's not, a gray or a beige or a black or, it's just, I think goes a little bit too far in the opposite direction. It's a little too bright. Uh, I don't want to, that painted lady color. It's not something that works real well either. So, the color is great. Just tone it down a little bit. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission?
Mr.
I guess
Sandberg?
Mr. Sandberry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the project overall is pretty successful, like the overall design. My question is mostly to the windows on the west side that are being moved, the building. Go to, slide 9. You'll have to find it stop here. The existing condition being installed. Good there. So I understand on the interior why those windows are being moved. You have a bathroom, you have a stairwell in those locations. I guess I'm wondering what the conversation was with SHPO and how their feelings were about removing them entirely. I would like to see maybe just retaining the trim on the outside so that there's a nod to what was there visually from the outside. And then it looks like there might have been a third opening below the window on the right, first floor. Possible that might have been an opening. So I think it would be nice to just retain the trim, maybe infill the opening or siding. Just kind of give a nod of what was there. Make it reversible and compare it to the layout changes to something else. Something on the- So I guess my question is, what was SHPO's opinion on that? Was that a conversation or was that just a approval?
Yeah, it was a conversation, and they didn't put up any resistance to it. So in some ways, I'm surprised by that, but it wasn't something that they were fine with. Basically, just extending the lap siding to cover them up with no representation of trim of the former windows or anything like that.
I think my preference would be to retain the trim.
Madam Chair, looks like Julie Mettler Grove is here from OCI online. I didn't know if she had any opinions or thoughts from Ohio City Incorporated to share.
No, Ohio City Inc. doesn't have any particular stance on this. Everything went pretty fine at the Ohio City Design Review. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Mr. Lozier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to thank the applicant again for such a thorough and well-presented presentation project. I guess I really only have, I think, one clarification question, or a couple, maybe two clarification questions. The first is the siding material that's proposed on the side. Is that also wood based on SHPO's commentary, or would that be a cementitious lap siding?
It would be the wood, the same wood that we're doing on the front, not cement work.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you for that. And I guess the second question that I had is relative to the future or the potential project that will happen to the south. Is the intent that the lots will remain two separate lots, or is there a consideration for lot consolidation for the future project?
No, we
And
keep.
does that have, and gotcha, okay, yeah. So I'm actually, fine with everything that was presented. I don't have too many concerns about the zero lot line, especially if the new apartment building is going to be built to the south. I don't know that there's really any pulling that back by a couple of feet. I don't think is going to give really any meaningful space to the occupants. If anything, it would be, a catch for, debris or things like that. So I don't really have an issue with the zero lot line. I would be supportive of that that variance. I also, if SHPO didn't have any commentary about the, boarding up the windows on the west facade in the front portion, I don't see that being a challenge personally either. I would feel more strongly if SHPO had a comment about that. I understand that the interior is really sort of dictating what's happening at the exterior. Because it's also not a primary facade, I'm not as concerned necessarily either. The color, I think it's, I don't mind the blue. I could be fine, with it as is. However, I do think toning it down a little bit would be maybe a little bit more successful in how it blends in with the rest of the neighborhood, but still providing a life and color of its own. I would also be supportive of staff's commentary around some sort of fencing along the west property line to help screen the AC units. I think it's, they mentioned from a visibility standpoint, I agree with that, but also from maybe a theft prevention scenario. I know that, in the past, the city has seen some crime relative to stealing copper piping and things like that. So in a way, if you're obscuring that from view, sort of out of sight, out of mind, and potentially, hopefully, less issues from a security standpoint. I want to also thank the applicant about working closely with SHPO and with the different siding materials and profiles along the front facade. While subtle, I think it really is the defining character of this particular property, and I'm glad that you're taking steps to maintaining that. Other than that, I think that, again, I'm really supportive of this project, and I personally would be willing to approve as presented, with the consideration, not a requirement, to revisit the color, but that's my own opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Lozier. I would echo everything that's been said. I'm in support of the project. I appreciate the applicant's attention to the detail and working with SHPO to try to replicate the existing, especially using the wood siding. So often we do see cementitious materials, so I appreciate that you're actually going to go the effort of replacing it and replicating the profiles that are there. Overall, I agree with the comments that have been made about the lighting and the landscaping and the fencing. The color, I would also agree. This one, I think I appreciate that you're making a statement here and not going with the typical grays and blacks, but maybe slightly toned down would be more appropriate for the era of the building versus the what is currently doesn't feel like it aligns with the era of the building. So overall, I do like, the blue color, just maybe a shade lighter in the historical palette appropriate for this era of building. But overall, I'm in support of the project.
I'm sure Mr.
Not-
Dudek has his hands up.
Go ahead, Mr. Dulick.
I want to commend the applicant as well. I think particularly getting the scale of that rear addition right and working with my fellow commissioners and working closely with BIPO, I think it makes it a much more successful project. And I think that I'm certainly being supportive of the variances. Getting real quick back to the color though, I do notice that at least currently there is a subtle color difference in those zigzag shingles above the windows. I think, and I would ask the Landmark staff who's more versed in this stuff, that almost is a panel that seems intended to make the window almost appear bigger, like someone who calls clear to door. I think it's a wonderful detail. I guess in the process of revisiting the color, subtleification, if I can coin that word, of the color scheme, I would ask to consider, the applicant to consider how that color, whether it becomes an accent or another shade within the color palette. I think it's a really important design feature. And I think there's an opportunity here to get a color scheme that's more harmonious with the street. I think it can still stand out. I think it's the value that's at issue of the color. But I think seeing this color in context, seeing this facade in context, but particularly because those sides read very large, because you always see it in 3 dimensions. So the big bright blue thing, I understand is kind of an idea, but I think that it's really the suggesting that the color be studied to be harmonious, with still standing out, but maybe being less bright. But look at those little detailed panels over the windows as a possible accent and a possible way to add some pop without making the whole thing quite as bright. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that idea of maybe a slight color difference in those pockets above the second floor windows. I think that could be a nice subtle detail.
We've not seen any additional comments and hearings fairly alignment. Would someone like to make a motion? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll take a stab at a motion. I'll see if my
Thank you, Ms.
fellow colleagues agree with it. So I will, I make a motion to approve as presented with the consideration to look at, revisit the color to make it a little bit less bright, look at the detailing on the front facade for opportunities to introduce subtle variation to highlight some of the key design features, and also a consideration for a fence along the west property line to screen the AC units, and support for any variances that may be required for this project.
Can I also recommend the conditions of resubmitting the lighting, the final lighting to staff, along with the final SHPO approved materials and final landscaping?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sandberry. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry,
Yes.
Mr. Tresser,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Congratulations, and we look forward to seeing your project move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness for today. We'll move on to National Register of Historic Place nominations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll give the history of this particular One, we have the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, which is scheduled to be seen at the Ohio Historic Site Preservation Advisory Board meeting on September 20th of this year. They are listing it as significant under criterion A, in association with events that have made significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history at the local level, especially in Cleveland African American social history. It is notable for its role in African American civil rights history by providing a place for African Americans to combat poverty and injustice and create programs that meet the needs of disenfranchised people. Through programs such as Operation Breadbasket and Fellowship Credit Union, Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church impacted the African American civil rights movement in Ohio. It was constructed in 1907-08 by Barnard and Parson. It also has a rectangular addition on the rear that was constructed in 1955 by J. Trevor Guy. And it is looked at for the period of significance beginning in 1964, when the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church marched to their newly acquired building, and extends to 1971 and beyond. Significant dates include 1964, when it relocated to this current site, and in 1967, when the church partnered with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to execute Operation Breadbasket. Its significance really starts with Reverend Jarman A. Henson, who was one of the only reverends in the city of Cleveland that witnessed and participated in historic civil rights movement events a few years prior to his tenure at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. He was one of the only Cleveland pastors to participate in the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955. He served for 14 and a half years at the Shiloh Baptist Church, which was one of the oldest African American Baptist churches in Cleveland, and he left with about 400 followers in 1962 to reorganize and create the fellowship and organize that as a mission. They had a strong partnership with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and they wanted to combat and change the poverty issue in Cleveland. Dr. King used the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church as a place for times to talk to the press when he was in the Cleveland area. He's also pictured in a historic photo where he's seated in the office space in the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church on a phone call. And then throughout the 1960s, Reverend Jarman and the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church were essential in Cleveland and the local community. Congregation was dedicated to civil rights issues such as the war on poverty, political and social issues, and gave women in the church the opportunity to contribute to fight for civil rights. In addition, they aided families that were impacted by the Huff Uprising of 1966, and partnered with Dr. King for programs such as the Operation Breadbasket, and they created a local credit union located in the church to help their residents and neighbors in their community. The Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church demonstrates how church was a place where African Americans worshiped, but also changed a church that was socially, politically, and financially active. The church is a locally designated Cleveland landmark, as the Fellowship Baptist Church of Christ, formerly known as Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church, and it's been a designated Cleveland landmark since 1978.
Beautiful building. Then I guess I will open it up to the commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? Quiet bunch today. I think this is, go ahead.
I was just going to say another option would just be a motion to support the nomination.
Okay. If there are no comments, if someone would like to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve. We're approving or
Support the nomination.
support the nomination.
Okay, so we have a motion. Thank you, Mr. Sandberry, to support the nomination. Do we have a second?
I will
Madam
second.
Chair, I second the motion.
I'll let Dr. Williams second.
All right. Thank you. We have Dr. Williams with a second. Any further discussion? All right. Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I read over the history of this building, and it's absolutely fascinating. I'm very excited to see it be nominated I just wanted to mention that in the report, which details that history, there are some typographical errors. So I just wanted to mention that they may want to tighten things up before this.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Maybe you can provide offline some feedback for the staff so that we present this appropriately. Any further discussion? All right, not seeing any from my side. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Dooley?
Yes.
Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sandberg?
Yes.
Mr. Trussick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trout?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing forward so many great landmarks recently. It's great to see. All right, that concludes our nominations, and we'll go to administrative reports.
All right, Madam Chair, unless you have the administrative reports, I'll get into the ones from staff. Just wanted to let everyone know that the Buckeye Commercial Historic District is being, I guess, advanced or recommended for inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places by the State Preservation Office. So it'll go on to the National Park Service, and under the process, it's usually a bit quicker than the part leading up to this. But that nomination was, I guess, created through a certified local government grant in partnership through Burton Bell Carr and the Landmarks Commission and the City of Cleveland. It was awarded last year in 2023. So it's exciting to see one of our CLG grants actually turn into a nomination that looks like it's going to create a new National Register Historic District. Also wanted to note that we did have an appeal over the last few weeks or months of 6114 West Clinton. If you guys remember, that was an approval with conditions. The owner of that property decided to essentially just ignore conditions you guys made and do whatever he pleased. And so we're pursuing that through housing court. He appealed conditions of your decision through Board of Zoning Appeals, and the case was dismissed on Monday after him not showing up for 2 meetings in a row that he was on the agenda for. So I will be working with, hopefully working with Chief Roberts down in the law department on pursuing prosecution of that, ensure that he does the right thing and stops doing work without a permit. I guess the final thing, we just wanted to, I guess, in the second half of the year, we just wanted to give you kind of a first half of the year update on what staff has been up to and what you guys have been contributing to for the first half of the 2024, so January 1st to June 30th. We've had 12 meetings here at the commission. We've reviewed 48 individual new cases this year, so that doesn't include ones that have come back or had previous case numbers. We've also issued 55 certificates of appropriateness. In addition, we've held 43 design review advisory committee meetings, so that's Carl, Jessica, and I staffing each of those either during work hours or after work hours. We've also had 60 new design review design review advisory committee cases reviewed. So of those, appropriateness.
Yeah, the administrative certificate.
Oh, these are the administrative ones. Okay, sorry. I haven't had enough coffee this morning. Yeah, not having electricity is really messing with me. So yes, yeah. From those, we've issued 23 certificates of appropriateness administratively. So those are ones that went to the design review committee, but didn't end up going to you guys at the commission level. We've signed off on a total of 101 permits administratively. So those are just ones that didn't make it to didn't need to go to design review, so that's using our new policies that you guys have adopted. And, you know, just sort of straightforward, simple things that, that we didn't think needed design review. We've had to deny 30 permits, or determine that review was not needed, so some of those were interior work only, change of use, that sort of thing, and then others, you know, timed out with no feedback from the applicant after 6 months. And then others were ones that were denied through our process. So in total, we've processed 219 permits so far this year, I guess, as of June 30th. And then, you know, there's some initiatives up here. You can see these are things that staff has been working on, I guess, first half of this year and some of that before that. Some of those continue to go on now. The landmark policies you guys are familiar with, those are the, you know, the windows, the roofing and the solar panels. So we hope to continue to work on those and bring more of those to you. You know, it was earlier this year that we kind of did that major overhaul of the design review advisory committee process and regions and all that. We've also been working on developing a new website. We're working with IT. Hopefully that's close to launching, but we will let you know when that is actually ready to launch. Carl continues to head up the national or the landmark nomination research, so that's keeping him busy. You know, we're advising city planning and working with the tours, outdoor dining permit process, assisting the cultural gardens, advising on design guidelines developments in different neighborhoods. As you remember, we saw the Little Italy ones earlier this year. We're trying to push some of the other neighborhoods and historic districts in Cleveland to adopt similar guidelines to aid in the developers better understanding the process and, you know, what we're really looking for as a commission. We've also been meeting with city council members and want to engage the CDCs a bit more. So we, I guess it was Tuesday, Landmark staff met with Council President Griffin and had a very good meeting just to kind of outline him on what we've been up to and, you know, trying to figure out how we can be involved in more throughout the city as we do kind of reach to all points of the city. We also got to have the fun of cleaning out 50 years worth of files and just stuff in the attic. So that was, I think, a fun staff bonding activity. And then Jessica's really been heading up a file audit, which is, I would say, maybe equally as messy as the attic. You know, 50 plus years of files, you know, some of which are just empty files with nothing in them. Some of them are duplicative, so she's trying to make some sense. I think the first hurdle was figuring out what the name of each landmark and each file should actually be, because there's a lot of inconsistency in that. So, so I guess, long story short, we've been busy and just wanted to provide you guys an update on that. So if you have any questions about any of these items, happy to field those.
I'll start off and just say thank you for all your hard work. It really has been amazing to see how much you've accomplished, and it's nice to see it written down. Usually I get to see some of this when I go in for the council budget hearing meetings, but it's nice to see it and have the whole commission be able to recognize all the hard work you do. So thank you. Yeah, obviously you're not bored, so thank you for all your hard work. But no questions from me. Any other questions and comments from the commission?
Madam Chair.
Oh, Mr. Doolett, go ahead.
Thanks and commendation for all the staff. This was great to see how much you do that we don't know about. When we just come here for the meetings and then talk with you informally, those of us who are denizens of City Hall. It's just a pleasure to be part of this. And I think part of that is the hard work that you guys do. So I want to add my commendation to that. Round of applause.
Ms. Anderson has her hand up.
Go ahead, Ms. Anderson. Sorry, you're very small on my screen.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm always amazed by how productive, how much work the staff gets done. I'm just really grateful to the staff and all their hard work. I wanted to put something out there. I am really, really hesitant to add to your workload. But I'm concerned because we are losing a lot of beautiful historic interior spaces throughout the city. And I don't think there's a mechanism to landmark interior spaces. But I think there's a critical need, especially these days, there's such a push to, you know, open up the floor plans and put down the luxury vinyl tile and, so we continuously see pocket doors and mantles go into the dumpster and, quarter sawn oak painted in white or gray. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed probably sooner than later, because we really are losing a lot of incredible historic spaces. I just wanted to put that.
Yeah, if we are, for our purview and ordinance, we're limited to the exterior. I know at different points in the past, I remember fairly recently, we kind of looked into and pushed for an interior landmark ordinance. It got bogged down pretty quickly. And that was looking more at, church interiors, like the old arcade, like the really grand spaces. So we can certainly look into it a bit, but I think we get some pushback on sort of those constitutional homeowners' rights kind of.
I have no doubt that we would get pushback. I have no doubt about that. But I think if there is a homeowner that chooses to do that, so that it would just make it that much difficult for somebody to come along, 10 years later and, open things up or, remove a staircase or something, then, because I see all that happening.
Yeah.
I think if we had that roadblock and somebody choose to utilize it, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that even public education and sort of highlighting some of the nice features and how valuable they can be.
And irreplaceable.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So, we're happy to do a little digging on that and see how far we can get, I guess.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for that comment, Ms. Anderson. Any other comments? It's hard, like I said, it's hard for me to see on my screen, so I don't know if anybody has any comments in the room.
No other hands raised.
Okay. Well, then thank you for that report. I think it's really, like we said, very helpful just to see it all in one place, all the things that you see or you do, what we see and what we don't actually see. Any other administrative reports today?
Madam Chair, I believe we're going to be having to schedule 2 demolition site visits in the near future. One in Little Italy, one in Broadway. We don't have all the details on that yet, but we will let you all know when those are happening.
Okay, thank you. All right, then if there is nothing else, then we'll adjourn today's meeting and see everybody in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.